Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Truth Podcast. My guest today is David. I'm not even attempting that. Go ahead, David.
Yeah. So, Jim, my last name is Chudyk. So, David Chudyk, you are not the first person ever to screw up my last name, and that's okay. My grandmother my father's side of the family is from the Ukraine from many, many years ago. So, we didn't have anything to do with the recent elections, but it is a Ukrainian descent of last name.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you guys didn't have to admit to that because
That's right.
Trump's been acquitted now, so everything's great.
There you go.
David has been in the insurance financial services business for better part of 2 decades. With twin 12-year-old humans and a 16-year-old human, a human wife, and a Dexter dog, Ginger dog, and Lego the cat, David is quite busy. In his past life, David was a tennis pro and recently taken the game back up again. The dream of being the oldest ever Wimbledon champion is still alive. Welcome to the show, David.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am too. Yeah, this is going to be some fun. We've got two crazy people here today.
Yeah, we won't be boring, that's for sure.
No, it shouldn't be boring. First question I wanted to ask you is, what lit the fire for you to want to become an entrepreneur in the first place?
Interestingly, I don't come from money. And so I went to started college, and in my freshman year, I was a marine science major. That's cool, right? You get to lots of cute girls in the marine science major, and you get to study fish and think, hey, maybe maybe one day I'll work at SeaWorld and train whales. And so two things happened. First, I went on a research cruise in my first year, and I threw up for 2 days. And that, having never been seasick, it was not fun. And then, being a male, at a certain point in your life, you're going to have, responsibility to, provide for family. So I went to the career office and said, hey, look, money doesn't solve the world's problems, but we need a certain amount of it. How much money can I make with this degree? And then they told me, and I said, I'm going to change my major because, again, we need a certain amount of it. And money provides some comfort. It provides some level to make the world a better place. And certainly lack of money creates a whole host of problems. So from that point, even working through college, it may not have been entrepreneur, but I would try to get as many hours as I could in my part-time jobs because I wanted to control some of my income. Going back to the tennis thing, I taught tennis during my college career. And when you're teaching tennis, you're getting paid by the lesson or by the kid, however many kids are in there. So you have to find a way to get more kids in there. Or if somebody wants a lesson from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night, you could either say no, or you can say yes and make that extra $20 or $30, which is a lot of money for a college kid. So I've always wanted control over income. And that's a big part of wanting to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it is. It is one, and I think it's more control too over time and money and what you get to do, how you can schedule your own days. It's more control of your whole life, I would say.
It is. And I just actually this morning did a financial planning for business owners seminar at the Chamber of Commerce. And we talked about risk. And many people say, well, you own your own business, that's risky. And that's absolutely true. But let's say you work at the plant. That's risky too, because what happens when your whole department gets outsourced to Mexico? Or what happens when artificial intelligence takes over your department? Or what happens when people just stop buying the product that your plant manufactures? Now you have no job, or half your plant doesn't have jobs. So risk is everywhere. But, at least in theory, we have some ability to manage our risk with our own efforts and creativity and entrepreneurial endeavors.
Yeah, we got the chance to mitigate our risk because we're the ones that are kind of dictating what we do and how we control that risk. At work, you can't control anything. I think it's almost riskier in some ways to have a job. What I mean by that is if you have a job and you're locked into a wage, you've kind of been there for a long time and you're comfortable with this wage, it's harder to replace it as time goes on. And so you kind of get trapped into the job.
Sure.
You know what I mean? You kind of don't have a way out. And then when that happens and you get let go, then major catastrophes can happen.
Sure. Absolutely. And if it were me, if I had the decision, everybody from the janitor to everybody in a company would have some sort of incentive pay. And I'm talking weekly, not like some annual bonus. If the company makes X amount, you get a couple $100. It would be on a weekly basis. I mean, if you're a housekeeper in a hotel and if you can increase the amount of rooms that you clean per shift, an extra $20 that day or something fairly measurable. And because I think performance-based pay is important to generate results. If you're going to get paid $10 an hour, whether you clean 10 rooms at the hotel or five, why would you clean 10? Just do five and, do the least you can to not get fired and get paid. So,
See, and I agree with you. I mean,
mhm.
whoever made up this rule that you had to work 8 hours a day and you had to, 40 hours a week, and it's stupid. At the shops, if your machine breaks down, you pick up a broom.
Mhm.
For what?
Absolutely.
You're not doing
Absolutely.
anything. You're not producing anything that
Sure.
makes money.
Well, as entrepreneurs, um, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Dan Sullivan of Strategic Coach. We play in the results economy. So in your career, you're making how much revenue you're making in as many hours as you choose to use. Um, there are other positions in life where you're playing in the time economy, meaning that we need you to sit at the front desk from 9 to 5 and answer phones. So there may be an hour where the phone doesn't ring, and yeah, you can vacuum, but still, we just need a body there in case somebody comes in the office. I think as much as a company can create its culture to where everybody's looking to provide more and more value and be compensated for that value, I think that's the best of both worlds. Because not
I
everybody
totally.
can has the stomach to have some sort of a commission only, type situation. I mean, there are people that need a base of some sort, and hey, that's great. Some people need that stability, but also some sort of commissions or incentive pays or things just to help people to go that extra mile. And it doesn't even have to be money. It could be extra days off. If you reach XYZ results, you get the extra day off this month, or leave early. It doesn't necessarily have to be money, although money I think is a good motivator.
And I agree with you. I don't think there's enough incentive out there for people that are working these, I don't want to say menial jobs, but, jobs that really don't require education or a degree or anything like that. We just kind of like, well, you're shoved here for how many ever hours. And people don't react well to that type of thing. They're not motivated by it whatsoever.
Well,
Not
don't you want
whatsoever.
purpose in your life? Don't you want to feel important? Don't you want to feel like you're making a difference? Well, if your job is to show up at 9, clock in at 8:59, and clock out at 4:59, what purpose is that? And even if the purpose is to earn extra money so your family can have a better life, that's a purpose, and that may help you to go that extra little mile, earn that extra money, or have that extra day off to spend with your family, or whatever is important to you. So,
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. I just think that we're not robots.
mhm.
We need to feel like we belong. We need to feel like we're contributing in some way. We need to feel like we're part of the business. We're part of the business that we're in. That we're
Mhm.
an integral part of that business, and without us, they couldn't survive. Even though they could, but we need to feel that way.
Sure, sure, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, so that was a big part of my entrepreneurial spark in the beginning, was just really wanting to have control. And like I said, even in college, trying to work extra hours, or when I was doing the tennis thing, figuring out ways to get more kids, doing a little during spring break, inviting kids out to do the tennis clinic. Or I came up with the idea that we would do a free birthday party for any kid. So if you're a 6-year-old and you're taking little tennis clinics and you love it, hey, my tennis coach is doing a tennis birthday party for 30 minutes and free of charge. So now you and 10 of your friends get to come out and do my tennis clinic, and I don't get paid for that, but hopefully a few of them would have stuck in and become future tennis players, and that worked. So that was just something that really got me going, was figuring out ways to generate you know kids and clients, which translates into revenue, which is always a good thing.
It's always a good thing. That's very smart. You
Hmm.
have really good ideas about what it takes to succeed and how to
Hmm.
motivate others to participate in that.
Well, that's
The
one
name
of
of the
the
game.
that's the name of the game, and that's one of the most important aspects of being an entrepreneur for sure.
It is. But
Mhm.
also with the highs, there's also the lows. So
Oh,
I want to go into a little bit of what has held you back during your entrepreneurial journey, either internally or externally.
yeah. So, how long do we have? 3 hours, 4 hours?
Yeah,
I can go.
it could be a day and a half,
Sure.
but
There you go. So, I think one of the first things that has held me back is there's a fine line between being generous and being weak. So I think a lot of people might be just afraid to say no, or not hold team members accountable. And you could say, well, I'm nice and I'm kind, but it really might be just weakness. So, going back to strategic coach, Dan Sullivan says we all have unique abilities. So there are things that you are just exceptional at, and there are things that you're not so great at that maybe you need to delegate to somebody else. Over my career, one of the things that's held me back is maybe accepting. I hold myself to pretty high standards, but I've accepted lower standards from team members. And there's always a reason. There's always an excuse. Sometimes they're legit. Sometimes they're not. But over time, if your performance is not where it needs to be, in some way, shape, or form, we need to change that. Whether it's by you performing better or your replacement performing better. So I would definitely say that motivating the unmotivated or unmotivatable people um, has been something that held me back. I heard a quote one time from John Wooden, and they asked John Wooden, "How do you motivate your players?" And his response was, "I don't. You don't make it on my team unless you're one of the most motivated people I've ever seen. I only bring champions on my team." There may have been some times where I brought some non-champions onto my team, and you're only as good as your team, because there comes a point in any business where you cannot do it all. So if you don't have good help, then there's a ceiling, and you just can't pass it.
that speaks to standards
Mhm.
basically. And everybody says, yeah, you can clone yourself or copy yourself, but the truth is you can't copy that desire, and you can't
Right,
make someone have it. So if someone doesn't have it, they just don't have it. That's
right,
kind of the way it is. And you have to mitigate that loss, or you have to help them and coach them and train them up to get to that level if they're willing.
sure, sure. And if they're not willing, there comes a point we both have to agree, you're not what I need, and our next step needs to be drastic, and that's hard, because I think that, and I heard in one of your other podcasts, you were saying that a lot of just really generally good entrepreneurs. So I
Mm-hmm.
think many
I do.
entrepreneurs are just decent people,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes decent people, they don't like having that hard conversation of, hey, we needed this, this is the task that we agreed would be done, and it's not done. How are we going to make it so next week these tasks get done, because this is important? Those are uncomfortable conversations sometimes. So and I think a lot of small business owners, that's where the ceiling comes, is when things don't happen the way they need to. um, what do you do then?
I agree with that. That and giving away too much, I
Hmm.
think. Just
Hmm.
trying to help people. You want other people to succeed too. So you're going to do whatever you can. If you feel they're a good person, you're a good person. You try to just help so
Sure.
much. But then you take away from the fact of, having to provide for your family, making
Absolutely.
money. I mean,
Well, if you think about it, if you're part of my paid team and you're making X dollars per week, you have to generate X plus something per week, or else mathematically it doesn't work. So, you know, everybody has to generate more than they're being paid, or else there's nothing extra for the business to pay all the other expenses that the business has. And people don't understand that. But it simply is a question of math. Everybody needs to be worth more than what, in whatever shape or form they're bringing in. And not everybody's in a revenue generating position, but everybody needs to be contributing to the bottom line, or else ultimately there's no line.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. When the money runs out, it kind of runs out. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yep.
it just, you can't do it any other way, you
Hmm.
know. and
Sure.
and the other thing is that in a non-revenue, like say the person at the desk that we were talking about, you go out of your way to make that person feel the most comfortable they can possibly feel on the phone, and feel
Sure.
welcomed and wanted at your place of business.
Sure.
And that's their value, is making the customer feel like, wow, this is a really cool place. I like doing business here.
Sure.
You know?
So we have for our office our success principles, and it's some principles that have it's how we define success, and they're all basically intangible. But one of them is that the customers of ours that value advice get the best possible customer experience. Now, in every industry, there are people who just want the cheapest whatever you sell, and that's fine. But the people that value our advice need to get just an experience that's just better than they can get anywhere else, and that is anything from my cheesy jokes make them laugh to maybe they would see the United Way plaque on the wall where we got some award for donating in time and money to the United Way, or whatever it is. Anticipating needs. If there is ever a problem with your account, maybe we call you proactively. Hey, you're going to get this letter, but we've already taken care of it, so don't worry about it. It was sent out in error, but we just want to let you know so you didn't freak out when you got the letter. People really appreciate those types of acts, although they're not required. So successful businesses are going to do more than what's required, and successful employees will do more than what's required.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And you need all that for your business to be healthy and sustainable.
Anything that any of us sell, you can buy on the internet potentially for cheaper. Doesn't matter what industry you're in. So we have to provide value. And that's hard sometimes. It's definitely hard to think of ways to provide value. But sometimes it's literally as just as much as a smile, shaking somebody's hand. Those are things that kind of are in the texting age that we're in. People don't smile anymore. People don't shake hands. People don't, open a door for people. And, those human interactions we are losing. And I think people still do appreciate it. They don't notice when it's not there, but they do notice when it is there.
Yeah, I was just going to send you a smiley emoji. No, I'm just kidding.
LOL.
Yeah, we do live in an age where we don't really interact too much, actually seeing each other. That's why I like doing this. Because the communication through text or through email or through Messenger or something like that, it's not the same thing. It's just
not.
The same thing.
It's not. Yeah.
You really get to know people when you get to see them, when you get to hear them, when you get to hear their voice. And we talked about that a little bit pre-show about how you don't know the inflections, you don't know how people are saying something when they're messaging it to you.
Sure. Are you familiar with the tool Loom, Loom?
Yes.
So for those who don't, it's a desktop application, and you click on it, and then it does a screenshot. So anything that's on your screen will show in the video that you email to somebody, and it has your voice. So if you're sending a proposal or anything, you can just have your voice explaining it, and your tone of voice, and a joke or whatever it is. And it literally takes less time than typing an email, but it helps for your personality to be seen. And I do think as human beings, we weren't designed to only communicate by text and by email. We were designed to see each other. We were designed to hear tones of voices. So Loom, that's the free tip for anybody who's not using it. It's a free tool, and it's really cool.
Yeah, it's a Chrome extension too. If you're using Google Chrome, it's an extension where you can just click on whatever your screen is. You show up, and you can choose this. You can show up in a little bubble right down the lower left or something like that, and talk about whatever's on your screen, which I think is really cool.
Yeah,
I do.
Absolutely.
I like it.
Good sales tool too. Also, you send a proposal or anything with that. Explain, the highlights. Hey, this right here, and you circle it with your pointer. This is the part that we were talking about, and here's your price, and this part here is what you were really excited about, and so we added that on, and it just adds more to it. So Loom is a great tool.
It really is. It is. That's a good recommendation, and we appreciate that.
There you go.
So we'll get into what you do specifically and what clientele that you serve.
Sure. So I have an interesting situation. We're a small but growing property and casualty insurance office. We're of one of the major carriers. But I proactively, back in 2004, started working on my CFP because I've always been passionate about, since I didn't have any money, about managing money and learning about money and growing money. So got my CFP, and then as part of my current agency, I was somewhat captive in what I could do as far as which products I could sell and services I could sell, and offered a lot of great things, but was fighting a little bit with my hands tied behind my back. So my company allowed us to become non-exclusive in 2020. So I kind of took a jump and said, you know what, this is the opportunity that I've been waiting for me to really dive in head first and build some niches and work on what I'm passionate about. So I signed this agreement, and I partnered up with a local registered investment advisor called Parallel Financial. We have 200 million-ish under management. So we're big, but we're not huge multinational big. So every client matters. So I spend about half of my week in the Parallel Financial offices, really working to deliver financial planning services to clients. So if you think about it, most people say, oh, you're a financial planner. Wow. So if I had $50,000, where would you invest it right now? And the answer is, I have no idea. I don't know. You might have to pay off credit card debt. You may pay off your car. You might your values might say you should give it to charity. I don't know how old you are. I don't know what you have. So a financial plan is much more in depth of just selling you some investment. And I think that's so valuable. And then the rest of our week, we're looking to develop and build a property and casualty insurance agency that is special in the sense that we provide things that other agencies don't provide. There's the little human factors of smiling and things like that, but we also want to make sure that we do three things. So we look to see if there are any holes in your life that could result in a major financial loss. And if I looked at your personal insurance, there's probably something somewhere that you don't have, that you don't understand your coverages, and then we would tell how to fill that hole, and then we would tell what it would cost to fill the hole, because it probably will, and then we give you the opportunity to say yes, fill it, or no, I'm comfortable leaving that hole unfilled, but I really appreciate the fact that you explained that to me, and I'm retaining that risk because I don't feel like it's worth paying that extra money for that coverage. And at that point, we've done our job, you've done your job, and that's a great client relationship. Or you might say, wow, I didn't realize that I needed to pay extra to have this XYZ covered, but that's well worth it, and I'll sleep better at night if I have that. So where do I need to sign? We're just looking to make the world a better place in that way.
That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's very necessary right now because I think insurance is confusing. It's just me, but I'm not totally up on everything. Sure. I don't know this and that and the other. I don't know if it's purposely designed that way or not, but certainly
lawyers are involved,
like
and you do. It can be difficult, but let me give you an example. So there's a term that it pains me to even say, but full coverage. So if I tell you have full coverage, would it not be reasonable for you to assume that pretty much anything that could happen will be fully covered? That's what full means.
Absolutely.
Well, everything's not covered. You have a deductible of probably $500. If you cause me to have a $5 million medical bill, you probably don't have $5 million of liability. So then, you're going to come back and say, yeah, you told me I had full coverage. So our job is to explain, hey, full coverage doesn't exist, but here's what you have, here's what you have, here's what you have, here's what this covers, here's how much of it would cover. And, are you okay with that? And if not, let's work on alternatives. But for some people, it may be simply having a low enough price policy that they can afford to keep it is the best we can do. And then, if you're Dr. Jim, who's making hundreds of thousands of dollars per year and you didn't realize what you had, you probably need an umbrella for an extra $1 million or $2 million of coverage. And it may cost you $300 or $400 a year, but you would really appreciate that. So, we take a financial planning type look at insurance coverages as well. And then, of course, in the financial planning aspect, insurance is a huge part of anything, because if we help you to develop a great portfolio, but then you cause a major car accident and there's $3 million worth of injury bills, well, there goes your portfolio that we help build you up. So we need to protect it as well. So holistic is kind of one of our words that we love.
Yeah, that's good too. I wonder if we can relate this to entrepreneurialism, because there are so many people out there asking about coverages and stuff like that for people that don't have a company that they work for outside of maybe the only company that they've created.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice for those people, or does that relate?
Yeah. So I actually at my I did a First Friday talk this morning at the Chamber of Commerce on some financial planning issues for business owners. Literally just a few hours ago, and we talked about. For instance, if your company has any driving exposures at all, there's always some, and it's not like a hypothetical pie in the sky scenario. Car accidents happen. So if whether you're driving or even, if you have an office manager that's running to Staples to go buy some paper on lunch, they're on the clock, they cause an accident, eventually you're going to have some exposure to that. So for you as a business owner to understand that, then also shoot for your office manager as well to understand that, hey, we have insurance rates that are, we're having to pay for this. So we have a lot of overhead. So if you don't think you make as much money as you should, well, nobody does, but it takes a lot of money to keep these doors open in this place. And insurance is certainly one of the expenses.
It is. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs get a little confused with that too, because it's just something that you have to have.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have that. But financial planning also for entrepreneurs is something that they should have as well.
Well, let's think about this. So most people who own businesses, their retirement plan is the sale of the business. So, when I get, and let's face it, nobody's business is worth what they think it is, just like nobody's car is worth what they think it is. So let's say that 20 years ago, you had, in my little town of Seneca, South Carolina, let's say you had the most successful photo developing shop. And you're thinking, you know what, I don't need an IRA. I don't need this and that because I'm going to sell this. I develop pictures and everybody needs pictures. So when the time comes and I retire, I'm going to sell my business for all this money and I'm going to live off of it. Well, guess what? Pictures don't get developed anymore. So your business doesn't exist. So
Exactly.
if you are not putting money away outside of the business, you're having a pretty rough retirement. So financial planning involves, helping clients to separate money from the business, and develop assets outside of the business. It involves employee benefits. What benefits can you have in place to help retain good employees and reward good employees, golden handcuffs and things like that. It does involve risk management. Let's say you had a key salesperson that was generating 80% of your business, and then that key salesperson falls off a roof. All of a sudden 80% of your sales are gone. So maybe hopefully you would have considered having like a key person life insurance on that person. But when it comes down to it, many small business owners, and unfortunately I fall into this, we spend way too much time just servicing customers and doing all the little things that we never stop and say, wow, what would happen if the top sales producer didn't make it to work tomorrow? And is there something I can do to protect myself? Or, hey, I haven't reviewed my insurance coverages with my agent. Let me call them and let's schedule an hour because I need to understand what I have and make sure it's right. And if it's right, great. It's an hour that confirmed everything, but there may be some things that have changed in the business from back before I got the policy. Sometimes even you get a policy and you don't qualify for the best rate, but a few years later, after no claims, you can get with a more preferred company. So you might even save money. But I think, the whole working in instead of on the business is true for all of us. And sometimes to either with a formal advisor, like a financial advisor or an accountant, or even just with a spouse or a friend, or a key leadership person to say, look, we're gonna get out of the office and we're gonna look at some things and we're gonna vision cast and we'll figure out where there might be some gaps, and let's figure out some ways to fill those gaps, whether they're risk management or how we're going to sell more. Are there any expenses? All businesses start accumulating $10 a month here, $20 a month there for subscriptions. And, sometimes you're just paying for stuff that you're not using. So looking at the business objectively, when you're not being, I don't want to say bothered by customers because customers are never a bother, but working uninterrupted is a good thing. at times.
It is. And being able to take that break and sit and look at that type of thing, your mind's always somewhere when you're an entrepreneur. You've always got something to do. It's very rarely ever a time when you're like, oh, I got some free time.
Yeah, I'm bored. Yeah, I'm bored. Those are words that never have.
Yeah.
They haven't come out of my mouth in 2 decades. So.
Yeah, it hasn't come out of my mouth lately either. It's been, no, I've always got something to do. Whether I choose to do it at that point in time, that's a different story, but
Sure.
you know.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so the audience that you serve, we didn't really get into that.
Mm-hmm. So financial planners typically, well, in business, there's a saying, the riches are in the niches, and you can't serve everybody. And the specialist typically makes more money than the generalist. So I decided that what would be a great niche for me? All the financial planners want the doctors, they want the dentists, they want the pro athletes, and obviously the bigger the client, that's better for a financial planner. So I said, well, where do I have a unique perspective? And the answer was insurance agents, right? So in your town, how many local independent insurance agencies are there? There's probably several, and they probably range from one-man shops on up to small corporations with 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 employees. And these are companies that have all the same financial planning needs that any other company does. But with my connections in the industry, I have certainly, I have an understanding. And I can relate and I can talk the language, and I know about the uneven cash flows. Typically insurance agencies can live and die by some contingency bonuses. So if you hit the bonus, in February or March, you're sitting pretty. If you don't hit the bonus, you're trying to figure out how to borrow money until next February or March. So I've actually started a podcast called Financially Covered, a podcast for insurance agency owners, their money and their profits. And what I'm trying to do is have about 80% of our episodes just provide value on how to run a better agency, whether that is having an HR person interviewed about proper hiring tactics, a business coach talking about communication. I have a marketing person that's going to come on. I have a sales trainer that's going to come on. So just good, solid business advice. And then, roughly 20% of episodes, we're going to talk about financial planning. So what type of retirement plan, or let's give an explanation of the new Secure Act that came out. And what I'm hoping and not hoping, this is what will happen, is that the insurance agents that listen to my podcast will, when they need my services, they'll think of me and they'll email me, and through the magic of technology, somebody can be in, 3,000 miles away, and we can have a great financial planner relationship. So we don't even necessarily need to be local, but that's one of my major goals. And the other goal, and I know this is a little bit general, but just working with the small business owners, locally, small business owners, I just have a heart for them because I know what, small business ownership is the greatest thing ever, but it's also sometimes the hardest thing ever. And I know that a lot of businesses are not they're not preparing for the future because they're so busy, and they if they sat down twice a year with a financial planner, they would say, yes, I know we've been needing to set up the simple IRA. We have the cash flow to do it. We just don't know how. And we Googled it once, and we started filling out a form, and we didn't finish it. And that was 3 years ago. And then we just missed the 35% stock market year. So let's just do it. Let's just sit down and do it. And that's what small business owners need, is the person to kind of nudge them of, let's just do it.
If you had any financial tips for the people that you serve, what would one of them be? Give me a nugget.
Sure. So one of the major financial tips for investing is emotions need to be eliminated. You need a systematic plan. So let's have an example. Do you have an iPhone?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you like your iPhone? Is it awesome?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Does that in itself mean that you should own shares of Apple?
No.
Exactly. But for a lot of people, it does, right? My iPhone's awesome. I'm going to go buy shares of Apple. That would be cool. Well, Apple's books may or may not be showing growth. There may be another company with a better product coming out that's going to hurt Apple's products. So the simple emotion of wanting to buy Apple stock because you have an iPhone is not the way it should be handled. Now, this isn't saying Apple's a good stock or a bad stock. We're not giving investment advice. We're just saying that that's not how to make the decision. We also need to not be emotional regarding the ups and downs of the markets. There are still people who say that they haven't made their money back from 2008. And the only way they hadn't made their money back is if they got out of the market, because it has come back plus. And actually, anybody who wanted it, we can post my email, and I can email a pretty cool article that our chief investment officer wrote about emotional investing. But emotions really get in the way of good, solid financial decisions. So that's where a good financial advisor comes about, or even simply, if you're managing your own investments, write down every investment holding that you have, write down why you are buying it and why you might sell it. Okay. So at least you're being intentional. And if it's, I'm buying Apple stock because they just came out with a cool iPhone, maybe it should be a little bit more in depth about their price to earnings ratios and some more fundamental analysis, as opposed to I just like their product. So lots of companies
makes perfect sense.
Are not profitable. Sometimes companies have great products, but they don't charge enough, so there's no profit, and the companies go under. So and that would make them not a good security to hold.
That's true too. Yeah, a lot of people make emotional decisions, basically. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons I think entrepreneurs make emotional decisions sometimes is just they just don't feel like they have enough time. Have you noticed that as well?
With not having time?
Yeah, they don't have a lot of time to think about those things. And one issue after another, they're kind of putting out fires, or they're kind of handling everything. So it's like,
right.
I just feel
well,
like,
and that's
I'll
where,
just do this.
Well, isn't it true that you and I, as entrepreneurs, we want to feel important? So we want to feel like I have to handle everything. Without me, this place would go under. Yeah. And you kind of fall into that cycle, and then you don't deal with we needed to get that retirement plan started, or we needed to figure out which security we should be invested in, just because we're so into everything. So I think it's a deeper issue of empowering people, have systems and processes in place so you don't have to be involved with everything. Exactly. You and I were talking about the transcription service that you use, and you said that'd be better for a VA to handle, because quite frankly, once this video is transcribed and somebody needs to go back and put some periods and commas in, that's probably not the best use of your time. But a VA can do that, and they can probably do it better than you. And then you can go out and do the things that are more important, some of which would be freeing yourself up to make some financial decisions that are important to you.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. We get so bogged down in the minutia of everything that we have to do that we don't farm out the little stuff so that we can make the better decisions and have the vision for what's coming next.
Sure. Absolutely. No question about that. And you can literally kill yourself and kill your business by trying to handle everything. So
yeah. I don't have a lot of hats in the closet. So
absolutely. Sure.
So I want you to, for the last part of this interview, if you could just tell the audience something from your heart about you and your business and how you can serve them.
Sure. Wow. So that's
a lot.
That is a lot there. So number one, I've always had income goals and would love to always increase my income. I would not want to compromise the things that are also important in order to make a high income. So we're all going to have that day where we're on our deathbed, and we don't want to have that. I made $1 million, but the person that worked at my front desk couldn't afford to feed their kids. Now, obviously, every position has different levels of value and pay and everything, and everybody need to be paid equally. But I think generosity is important. So I think that's something that I would stress. I think having a money philosophy and and a business philosophy is important. So I shared that we have some success principles that we literally have on a daily checklist just to kind of look through those. They include The last one is that our office and individual revenues continually increase. So one of the ways that we define success is that if everybody in our office is making more money. So that's pretty cool, I think. But also for our office to make more money. Another one is we do our part to make the world a better place. And sometimes that's giving money to charity. Sometimes that's just, the little old lady that comes in and says she's having surgery next week. You make a note and you call her and see how her surgery went. There's a lot of ways to make the world a better place. And I think, and then it all goes back really to be purposeful to all the things that are important to you. There's, marriages, there's kids, and what we make time for. Human beings spend resources, whether it's time or money, on what's important to them. And we need to make sure that we're spending our time and money and all of our resources on what's important to us. And that certainly has to include non-business related activities. That's your spirituality, that's your family, that's your health, and everything that's important. Because, I blinked my eyes and I went from my 20s to my 30s and the 30s to the 40s, and then you're going to blink them again, you're going to be 80. And then, life goes by quickly. You see some of these Facebook pictures, and there's some skinny guy with hair holding my kids when they were young, and I can't figure out who that guy is. He looks kind of like me, but not really. So, time goes by. So we have to live our lives in a way that we can be proud as well. So it's a juggling act for sure, because running a business can be all encompassing, and we have to do it well, but we also have to make sure that all of the other things that are really important are handled as well. So when you figure out how to do that, you let me know.
Yeah, I ain't there yet either, to be quite honest about it.
Never sleep would be one. So.
I'm getting there. No, I'm kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I really appreciate you being on today. It was
Sure.
It was a really good conversation about a topic that I don't think people really think about as much as they should.
Sure.
So, everybody, if you could click the subscribe button, and you could click the little bell thing that tells us that you want to know when more videos are coming out, and hit the like button. If you liked the topic of conversation today and liked our guest, if you could do that, we really would appreciate it. Everybody have a great day.
Good deal. Thanks. And I enjoyed being on.
Oh, me too.